Okay, hi everyone. This is the Year 3 science lesson, and we're going to be doing an investigation today. Hopefully you've seen the home learning pack that has part of chapter 3 from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory on it for you to read, which is all about Prince Pondicherry and his palace. And there's also a video clip that you can watch from the 2005 movie as well, which is quite a good one to watch. So make sure you have a little quick look at that before you start this PowerPoint. So we're going to do an experiment to see if we can help the melting disaster that happened to Prince Pondicherry. We're going to see if it could have been avoided first in part 1, and then in part 2 we're going to see if we could make it better and correct the issue. So that, like I said, this experiment is in 2 parts. Feel free to do part 1 on one morning and save part 2 for another day. That's completely up to you. Okay, so our learning objective today: I can conduct an investigation and draw on conclusions. Here is some vocabulary that we're going to be needing to use today. So we've got melt or melting, cool or cooling, making something cold again, reversible, which means we can do something and then take it back to where it was. Or is it irreversible, where you can make a change to something but you can't make it change back? The word change, the state of something. Is it a solid? Is it a liquid? We've also got those 2 words down here as well. Conditions, what kind of conditions are we using today? Maybe we could try and use the word climate as well. I know we've spoken about that in geography before. Direct sunlight and indirect sunlight, something that's right in the sun's view, something that's not in the sun's view, like the shade. Direct heat and indirect heat, very similar. Has the state, has it hardened, has it softened? And like I said before, we've got a liquid which can move around shape, and we've got a solid which is completely still and we can pick it up usually. Okay, here's a picture of Prince Pondicherry's house, his palace. Would you live in this house? Where would you build this house? What would happen if it was a very hot day or a very rainy day? How would you make sure this house stays standing? Would you use different kinds of chocolate for different parts of the house? Maybe pause the video here and just have a little chat with people who are near you at home. Okay, for the investigation today, these are the things you'll need. Some chocolate chips or pieces. I used pieces, and you can extend your investigation by using different types of chocolate, which is what I have done as well. You might need some containers. Tupperware or old takeaway things are really good. A way of melting, so maybe a pan and a bowl or a microwave. A way of cooling, a fridge or a freezer, and some pens and some paper for writing down your notes. If you don't have access to these things, carry on with the PowerPoint, because I've done the experiment as well, so at least you can see how it's worked out. So, but there are different ways of doing this, so keep going with it. Okay, so I decided to use the 3 different types of chocolate. I've got milk chocolate, which is the lighter brown one, dark or plain chocolate, which is the darker one, and white chocolate, which is the white chocolate that you can see in the picture there. But you can use whatever you have available to you, maybe even Easter eggs if you have them left over. I didn't, because I ate them all, so I used different types of chocolate that I had at home already. If you are going to use cooking chocolate, remember that will have a different boiling point, a different melting point to what we're using here, so just keep that in mind. And what I did was I took 3 pieces and put them outside, as you can see here. I took another 3 pieces and I kept them inside, just in my kitchen. It's quite cool in there, just so we can have a bit of a control to see what the temperatures do. I've put down here as well, there are different ways of doing this. So I've decided to put some outside, some inside, and I do also melt some as well with my microwave. So you can decide if you want to put them in different places, maybe on a windowsill that gets a lot of sun, so it's indoors but it's in the sun. Maybe you could do some that's in the shade and some that's in the sun. Completely up to you how you want to do it, as long as you are noting down what you've done. Okay, so different ways of melting some of your chocolate. You can do the pan and the bowl. I've used a Pyrex bowl for most of mine because they are really good for heat. Just make sure you're using something that won't melt, and make sure that if you are using the pan and the bowl, that the bowl isn't touching the bottom of the pan. I used a microwave for. So this is what happened. I put each one in the microwave for 20 seconds, so it was all the same time at the same heat. I put it on a high heat in my microwave, and the milk completely melted within the 20 seconds. The white melted a little bit. I moved it around with the spoon, and the bottom was able to kind of slodge about a bit. Nothing happened to the dark chocolate at all. So my conclusions from microwave melting: did the chocolate change shape? If you use different types of chocolate, did they all melt at different rates? In what conditions does chocolate melt best? So is it has to be really hot? Is it really cold? What kind of conditions should the prince have built his palace in? So from all of those different questions I asked myself, this was my conclusion. If the prince had a palace made of all the different types of chocolate, then it should have melted at different rates, depending on how hot the sun was that day. Prince Pondicherry could make a palace out of dark chocolate, as it seems to melt slowly. However, if you continue to heat dark chocolate, it will melt. So he would have the same problem again. And just that's what happened. I carried on melting the dark and the white to see if they would eventually melt. And I kept going at 10-second intervals. So I put the dark chocolate back in, put another 10 seconds on, another 10 seconds, another 10 seconds. And you can see here it took 50 seconds in total to melt. So no matter if it does make his palette out of dark chocolate, it will still melt at some point. It will just take longer to melt. My outdoors milk chocolate melted in 1 hour and 40. And so did the dark chocolate, strangely enough. The white chocolate took a bit longer. It took 2 hours to melt. And all of my indoor chocolate, nothing happened at all. Didn't change, didn't melt. So I ate it. It was very tasty. If you are going to do the experiment yourself, well, I'd like you all to do the experiment yourself. If you're going to use just milk chocolate, just place one piece in the sun, one piece indoors, and melt one using the microwave or pan. Make sure you have an adult present for the controlled melting, because we are using different equipment for that. And make sure you keep checking on the pieces of chocolate outside. I put a lid on top of my Tupperware when I put it outside to make sure that next door neighbour's cat didn't eat it, so keep that in mind. And if you're using more than one chocolate, you can try and do what I did, make a small little table and note down how long it takes to melt and where it's melting from. If you don't have access to a safe outdoor space that you can use, or a microwave or a pan to melt the chocolate, especially if you don't have a bowl or something to put on top, then put the chocolate in your hands and count how long it takes to melt. So you can count in seconds how long a small piece takes, maybe 2 pieces, maybe 3 pieces, and your hands are nice and chocolatey, and you get to lift off after. Very fun experiment indeed. Okay, so this is the second part. We have melted everything now. And now we are going to look at, can we reverse that change? Is it going to be a reversible change, or is it going to be an irreversible change? So can we bring it back to its original state? You saw my chocolate was in squares. Can I bring it back to the squares again? So I took the microwave chocolate and I popped it into the fridge for an hour. I want you to tell me what happened to the chocolate. Does it have a new shape? And can you put it back into its original shape? It's got to be the same height, the same length, and the same depth. Now let's see. So the milk chocolate had completely hardened and I couldn't get it back to its original shape. You can see it just there on the right where it says in the fridge. That was the milk chocolate. I couldn't get it back into the square. Completely gone. It completely cooled, completely hardened, back into a solid again. And it wasn't in the shape that I wanted the solid to be in, but I couldn't get it back into that shape. I left the white chocolate and dark chocolate to cool at room temperature, and the chocolate wasn't completely hard, hadn't completely cooled, but I still wasn't able to put it back into its original shape. It was still quite soft, but couldn't get it back into that square. So the chocolate that was outside took just under 2 hours for the chocolate to melt, and I put it in the shade until it completely cooled, and it took about 1 hour and 20 minutes. So 2 hours to melt, 1 hour and 20 minutes to cool, and the same thing there, I couldn't get it back to its original shape. So if Willy Wonka cooled down the melted palace that you can see here on the right, would Prince Pondicherry have his palace back? What do you think? Yes, no, why, or why not? Let me know what you think about that. Okay, once you have completed the activity, whether it is just with the the milk chocolate, or all three, or maybe just two of the three, that's fine as well. I'd like you to show your findings in this way. I'd like you to role play a news report about the great melting disaster of Prince Pondicherry's palace, including a special interview with a scientist, which is you, who explains why the disaster happened and why Mr. Wonka can't fix it. Some tips for parents just throughout this investigation you're going to do together. Ask them lots of questions, especially those that begin with why. Why is this happening? Why do you think that? And just the children will ask lots of questions as well, and encourage them to ask lots of questions, because that's what science is all about. It's all about inquiry and questions. I have popped the vocabulary that we saw at the beginning on the next slide. So when the children are talking out loud, or maybe they're writing down a conclusion if they want to write it down, see if they can use some of that vocabulary as well. And I'm just going to pop it at the end of this here as well. Okay. And there's the questions again as well for them to discuss as well.